Hey there, good afternoon. Another gray, cold, snowy day in December here in Reykjavik, Iceland. So I'm on a mission today. Yesterday I did a day tour up to the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. But today I am working on the computer and right now going to a laundromat, a self-service laundromat cafe where I can do laundry as well as get some food and use the Wi-Fi and edit my next video. A question people often ask, what editing program do I use? I use VideoPad, it is called. I've been using it for like close to a decade now. Good program and a decent price. You don't need Wi-Fi to edit your videos using that program. So people often ask about laundry and how I get my laundry done, while I'm traveling, and it is just different ways, all depending. I wash some clothes myself. If it's just a matter of a few pairs of underwear or socks or whatever, then I will oftentimes just wash them in my room. But when the things start to add up a bit, then I try to find a place to have it done. This one is self-service. Sometimes it will be a place that I drop it off. Just depends a lot on the country. I don't actually have a lot of stuff here, but wanted to get it done properly. Now, people had asked, how did I end up with the warm clothes for Iceland after traveling in Morocco, where I was only walking around in sandals? You can see, no longer in sandals. Then, as I mentioned, I flew from Morocco to Washington, D.C., and then went to New York City for Thanksgiving, where I met up with a friend who brought me some warmer clothes. Now, where did I get all of my clothes? So, the hat I got in Kathmandu, Nepal. This jacket, also Kathmandu. The gloves, Lviv, Ukraine. My Hindu Shiva shirt that has been in a lot of videos, I got in Bogota, Colombia. The scarf I got in Morocco just a couple of weeks ago. And the long underwear I'm wearing, I got in India. So everything else I got in the US. So I have about a mile walk down to the laundromat and thought that I would tell a story while I'm walking down there. And so the subject of this video is a stroke of luck that completely changed my life. And I'm not exaggerating when I say completely. My life would be very different if it hadn't been for one question that I asked somebody. And I will get to that in a minute. But this is about how I got a job in Jasper National Park, Alberta, Canada, back in 2008.
This is a gorgeous scene here. Morning after a big snow. This is one of the hotels that I work for. I actually work at the next one down right over here, but the company owns both of these.
Now, in order to understand the full context, then I need to go back in time, a long ways back in time, to the 1960s. My parents were living in Los Angeles, where my family is from. All of my family is from LA. I have no Canadian family, but my parents both worked in a hospital. My dad was a laboratory technician. My mom was a nurse, and they were working in a hospital in Los Angeles and wanted to get out of Los Angeles. My dad's boss was from Vancouver, Canada, worked at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and he had left Los Angeles and went back to Canada. And then at some point my dad and my mom decided to leave LA and go to Canada, and my dad would get a job at UBC, University of British Columbia, with his old boss who had been down in LA. So they moved to Vancouver. I was born there, so that's the critical point here. I was born in Vancouver in the 70s. And then after 2 years, we all moved back to Los Angeles, and I was raised in California. So I have no family in Canada. Laugabagur. So this is the main pedestrian walking tourist street going down that way, and the laundromat that I'm going to is straight down there. However, I'm going to get off this street to get away from some of the noise and more people to walk past and walk down this other street and see if it's a little quieter. So due to being born in Vancouver, I am a Canadian citizen. If you're born there, you're a citizen automatically, even though I was raised in the US and never went back there until decades later. But I had wanted to go back and experience Canada more. I visited again for the first time in 1992 when I was 20. And then I had passed through a couple of times previously when I was going to or from Alaska, because I went to university in Alaska for a couple of years and then went up there for work in Denali National Park again in 1995. But other than that, I'd never really fully or properly experienced Canada, the country where I was born and where I was a citizen. And so I just kind of had this thought in the back of my mind that, you know, maybe someday I will take advantage of my Canadian citizenship and work in Canada. And so fast forward to either 2007 or early 2008 when I was on a big trip to Asia in which I went to, well, first Hawaii and then Thailand for the first time and then back to India and then Nepal for the first time and went trekking and then back to Nepal and back to Hawaii. That was a 8-month trip total, including Hawaii. And somewhere on that trip, I forget where, but maybe in Thailand, then I was talking with some people who had either been traveling in Canada or maybe they were Canadian, I forget. Anyways, they mentioned Jasper National Park as being a nice place and kind of a less touristy Canadian national park compared to Banff, which is much more popular. And so I just had this thought in my head, well, maybe I will go to Jasper National Park someday and who knows, maybe even look for a job there. So later in 2008, I had come back from that trip. I had my car, which had been parked in Portland, Oregon, where I was working before as a delivery driver for a food delivery service, basically Uber Eats, before there was Uber Eats, a local company that delivered for dozens and dozens of different restaurants all around Portland, Oregon. And so I came back, picked up my car, and decided to go on a road trip, with Canada being my general destination. First, I stopped at a rainbow gathering in Wyoming. And spent like a couple weeks or whatever at this rainbow gathering. And then I continued from there up into Canada. First, I went to, okay, what was the name of this town? I forget. I will put it down below. It will probably pop into my head at some point here. But I had heard about this town in British Columbia years and years earlier, back in 1996. I'm getting on so many tangents here, but what the heck, might as well. And so back in 1996, I was hitchhiking around the US. So this is like going into a whole phase of my life that most of you know nothing about unless you happen to read my book, Following My Thumb, or my other book, Kundalini and the Art of Being, when I was a hitchhiking vagabond for 6 years in the 1990s. So I met these two Canadian guys in Northern California at a rainbow gathering, and then we had this whole funny, weird adventure going from there to Sedona, Arizona in their van. I got a ride with them from this rainbow gathering. And Nelson, there we go, Nelson, British Columbia. is where these guys were from. They were in a band in the Nelson area, and they were like playing music in the US, like on tour, but the other members were scattered around and they weren't playing right at the moment. Anyways, this is how I had heard of Nelson, British Columbia. So from the Rainbow Gathering in Wyoming, I drove up across the border into Canada, went to Nelson, and there I got a work exchange job using WWOOFing, it's called. Worldwide Workers on Organic Farms, or there is the Hallgrímskirkja church there. Anyway, so WWOOFing is Willing Workers on Organic Farms. And it is a work exchange program worldwide in which you can work places that you otherwise couldn't work if you needed a work visa, but you're doing work exchange, and so you get a place to stay and maybe some meals. Let's go look at this beautiful, colorful side of this building. And so you don't make any money, but you work there and get a place to live and possibly meals included. So I did a work exchange situation there that I found through the website that involved chopping firewood. I was there for like 10 days or so, chopping firewood like 6 hours a day, every day, or like a day and a half off with this couple. So it wasn't really a farm, but it was a couple, Canadian man and woman, who lived in the woods outside of Nelson. And while I was there, then my mission was to get my Canadian SIN card, social insurance number card, which is the equivalent of a social security card in the US. And so that is what I needed in order to be able to legally work in Canada. I guess I had my birth certificate and whatever else was needed to make that happen. And I got it done, got my SIN card, my license to SIN, and from there I drove up to Jasper. Kind of a roundabout route, doing some camping along the way. I was utilizing this book that I bought at a bookstore, Free Campgrounds in the Northwest, like Oregon, Washington, and then British Columbia, maybe Alberta or something. And I was finding free places to stay. I had very little money at the time, and so I was shooting for Jasper, hoping to get a job there. So I get to Jasper in the Canadian Rockies, just north of Banff in Alberta, Canada. And I go to the employment office there, the general, like, where to find jobs office, and there is just nothing decent available. Like, nothing is really looking like it's something I would want to do. And so I camped there for a few days at a campground right outside of the town. And I'm trying to think, you know, what am I going to do? Should I stick around longer or go somewhere else? Or, you know, I was like running low on money and needed to find some work. Starting to overheat here. It is warming up. So after hanging out for a couple of days, then one day I go from my campsite down to the bathrooms to use the bathroom, and there's somebody in there. And I hear like two voices. It's kind of strange. And then the door opens up and two of the workers come out of the bathroom. And I have this just random thought that, as it turned out, completely changed my life. So I thought, well, what if I asked these guys if they know about any jobs available in the area? Which didn't completely make sense because they're regular workers. Why would they really know about, you know, job openings? And also, the campgrounds would be under the National Park, you know, authority or whatever. And getting jobs in national parks is usually pretty tricky. You have to have like, you know, certain qualifications or whatever. But anyways, figured, you know, worth a question. And so I asked him, and the guy says, yes, I am leaving like in the next day or two to go back to school in Montreal. And he had 2 jobs. So he worked at the campgrounds, and then he had another job as a gardener for one of the hotels in the town of Jasper, nearby. And so I'm like, great, what is this gardening job? And so he tells me it is a gardener for a company that actually owns like 6 hotels in Jasper National Park. Some of them in town and some of them outside of town. And you just go around to the hotels and you mow the lawns and water the plants and just generally keep the grounds in good condition. So I say, okay, where do I find out about this? And he tells me the hotel and says, just go into the employment office for the hotel and ask them about it, and maybe you'll have a chance of getting this job. So I head down there, go in there and talk to him. Nobody else had applied for the job or anything. It wasn't publicly available. I couldn't have found out about this any other way. And they gave me the job. And I started like a couple days later or something. So the job was seasonal because, of course, the gardens are going to be, like here, covered in snow in the winter. And so it ended, I believe, October 31st, at the end of October. So after doing the job and then, you know, saving a bit of money there, then I was thinking that it would be nice to work in a ski resort in Canada for the winter. But the ski resort in Jasper is a ways outside of town, like 45-minute drive or something, and it's just kind of inconvenient. So I thought, well, I think I'll go to another ski resort, and so I decided to go to Whistler, north of Vancouver, and look for work there. So I left Jasper, drove on down there, got to Whistler, where I discovered that, for one thing, it was basically too late to find jobs there because they book them in advance. They do the hiring in the months kind of leading up to that, and there was just like barely anything available. And then secondly, the housing situation there was insane. So I remember hearing about one guy's housing arrangement, and he had a like condo or whatever with, I believe, 4 bedrooms. There were 2 people in each room, not necessarily couples. You might have a roommate in the small room, and each person was paying like $800 a month for a shared room. Whereas in Jasper, the accommodation was like $150 for a shared room situation. But still, that, you know, leaves a whole lot of room to save some money instead of just spending all your money. So I decided to bail on Whistler and instead went back to Portland and got my job again as a delivery driver driving food around Portland. So fast forward to summer of 2009, I had managed to save up some money and I decided to go on my trip to Greece, Egypt, and Turkey for 4.5 months. I left Portland in August, spent 3 months in Greece, and then to Egypt for 3 weeks, and then to Turkey for 3 weeks. And so I came back from that trip basically flat broke, or almost broke, and decided to go back to Canada again and look for another job at a ski resort, but this time in Fernie, in British Columbia, another cool town that I'd heard about, a ski town where the ski resort was like right near town, and it looked like a really kind of classic mountain ski town. So I drove up there and I got a place to stay using woofing, actually. That's right. Somehow I used woofing to get a place to stay in this girl's house. I was basically paying like week by week or something like that. But I ran into the same problem, especially because this time it was like late December or maybe even early January, in which there was just nothing available, no jobs. Okay, this is bizarre. I lost the Laugavigur Street. Now I'm at Laufasvigur. I think that Vigur just means street, so you just say Laugavigur, not Laugavigur Street. But anyways, I will wrap up the story, almost done here, and then find that laundry place. So anyways, so I stayed like 2 weeks in Fernie or Fernley. I think Fernley is in Nevada. I also live there. That is where I speaking of tangents, had a job working at a casino as the gas station cleanup attendant. That's a whole other story that I told in a video a while ago, or maybe I wrote a story about it on Instagram. Anyways, I won't get lost on that one. So, no luck finding a job in Fernie. And so I decided to call up Jasper again and see if they had any openings. They had like one position. It was the relief night auditor. The night auditor is there from 11 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the front desk. Okay, this is the lake. I know where I am. Need to get over there. So we'll walk around the lake. This is perfect. And so the night auditor is the front desk attendant who also does separate tasks involved in auditing the room charges and the restaurant charges and making sure all of the books are all squared away. And then also checking people in, but of course there's not many people coming in the middle of the night. So the relief night auditor is the guy that fills in on the weekends for the regular night auditor. So one guy does it 5 nights a week. The relief night auditor does it 2 nights a week and then gets another 3 days a week on a day shift as a front desk attendant. And so you get your full-time work. And so I accepted the job and drove up there. Actually, no, I did not drive up there. I had sold my car. That was one of the only ways that I had any money left at that point. And even at that point, I had almost nothing left after the whole Fernie, sort of fiasco of not getting a job there and spending money on a place to live and everything. So I guess my car was still waiting for me when I came back from my trip to the Mediterranean, and I sold it in order to have some cash, and then caught a bus up to Fernie, I forget, but I definitely caught a bus from Fernie to Jasper and started that job. And so I worked there that time for I think like 8 months until fall of 2010, and then took off having saved up like $1,000 a month. So I had, $6,000 or $7,000 or whatever saved up, and started a trip to the Philippines for the first time, and then Malaysia, Singapore, back to India for like 6 months or so. And then I was flat broke again and went back to Jasper. They had another position open, this time as the full-time night auditor at the front desk through the night. And so that was in spring of 2011. And then I worked there for another 6 months or whatever, and then moved to Hawaii. And then went back there again in 2013 and went back there again in 2014. So, point being, long story long, then if I hadn't gotten that job, if I hadn't happened to ask those guys if there was any work available and ended up at the gardening position, I probably would have just left Jasper and went back to Portland and worked there delivering food. And who knows what would have happened. I mean, maybe things would have worked out more or less the same, just different, and I would have continued to work and then travel and then start the videos going. But another little thing here is that I bought my first digital camera in Jasper when I was there. I had been holding out on getting a digital camera because I just kind of wasn't impressed with the quality of the prints of digital photos that I'd seen. I thought that they looked kind of just weird and unrealistic, and that the technology wasn't good enough that they were as good as a real, actual, film camera with negatives. I was taking pictures, not, anything too special, but that was how I was documenting my travels at the time with a regular camera, getting film developed as I went along oftentimes. But I finally decided, okay, it's time to get a digital camera, and so I got one when I was in Jasper in 2008, the first time that I was there. And that camera is what I filmed my first videos with in Greece, Egypt, and Turkey, because I discovered that it had video capability. That was a total surprise. I was just buying a digital camera. After I bought it, I was like, what's this function with the little movie thing on it? And lo and behold, it was video. That was just like this added bonus, like, wow, it comes with video capability as well. And so I started messing around with it in Jasper and then filmed clips in Greece, Egypt, and Turkey. And then the only reason that I didn't use that camera for my next trip later the next year to Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, India, is because when I was in the deserts of Egypt, I asked a guy to take a picture of me and these two girls, one Canadian, one Spanish, that I was traveling with. And in the course of taking that picture, the guy dropped my camera in the sand. And some little pieces of sand got stuck in the shutter and it wouldn't open properly. And so I didn't get photos of the most amazing thing that I experienced in Egypt that time, of the tour that we did, overnight tour into the deserts of Western Egypt and this amazing oasis that we went to. I did get pictures from the girls sending them to me, but not with my camera. And then later it kind of started working again, but then it always kind of had this problem. And so basically I decided to get another camera, which that one wasn't very good either. It was a slow process of upgrading the cameras. But anyways, that was what led me into YouTube, was getting that camera and going on those trips that I might not have gone on if I hadn't gotten that job in Jasper. I might have just, stuck with the food delivery thing, because I would have had an apartment in Portland, and it's a lot more difficult to leave and go travel when you're paying for an apartment. Whereas in Jasper, it was a accommodation situation that they set up for you. And so I could just leave and come back easily. So who knows, but if I hadn't happened to ask those guys, then things would have been very different one way or another after that. All right, time for me to find this laundromat. So I'm not sure what I'm doing next here in Iceland, but I'm going to inquire at a tour office, and tomorrow either go on a day tour or maybe a multi-day tour and get farther out there in Iceland. We shall see. So thanks for watching. See you later.